The Brutally Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Starving Artist Brewing. Starving Artist Brewing may be a small speck on Michigan's beer map, but they say big things come in small packages. A brewery who really puts their money where their mouth is, supporting underground artists far and wide. Making delicious beers with the simple belief that you should judge beer, not people. Brutally Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. For over 30 years, Rockabilia has been the go-to destination for all things band merch. With over 500,000 items in their online store and collaborations with today's hottest bands, you're sure to find something you love. Use our code BREW10 at checkout and take 10% off your total order. So go pick up your favorite new piece of merch now over at Rockabilia.com. And now, on to the show.
Say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Brutally Speaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is Scott Lee. It's funny, to me, I don't feel like Scott Lee needs any introduction, especially if you are a fan of, well, honestly, most of the bands that are on this podcast and the era of music as a whole that most people probably know from this show. But if you don't know, Scott Lee used to, I guess still does, put on shows in the Massachusetts, New England area. Also started up the New England Metal Hardcore Festival, which is returning this year with a pretty fucking stacked lineup at the Palladium September 15th and 16th in Worcester. And also does Sound Rink, is a band manager. I mean, like I said, if you don't know who Scott Lee is and you listen to this podcast, I do kind of find it hard to believe that you wouldn't know who he is, at least even in name. But Scott is someone, it's funny. It's funny being this age, almost 40, and being into a lot of the bands from, that Western Mass scene and so forth, and just thinking to myself, this is someone I watched on the band DVDs, the band documentaries and so forth, and someone you'd constantly see shouted out in band liner notes and so forth, and was one of those people that it was like, oh, apparently this guy is somebody, and then as you kind of start finding out who he is, you just kind of are like, oh shit, this guy has his hand in so many things, and also from the DVDs and so forth, just seems like a really fun, rad dude to hang out with. And it was just one of those things when this came across my email to have Scott Lee on. Obviously, I leapt at it and really wanted to talk to him, pick his brain a little bit about just putting on a not anymore, but maybe moving forward again, a yearly festival, as well as just kind of getting into Sound Rink, getting into the meet and greet and creating more of a VIP meet and greet experience that didn't really exist from what I remember until then. And it's just, having these behind the scenes people, like I said, knowing who Scott was and what he has been doing for so long, I felt like it was one of those people that it's like, well, why wouldn't I want someone like this on the show to kind of just tell the stories that they probably have had and know of for such a long time. Plus, as you sort of hear throughout the chat, there's so many people that we peripherally are friends with that it just kind of seemed inevitable that at a certain point in time that we would end up running into each other or being introduced to each other in some way, shape, or form. So it was super rad getting to talk to Scott, and the stories don't disappoint, and this is a really good chat, and I'm really glad to actually see Scott Lee doing a shitload more press as of late. Like, he was on the Lamb Goat Van Flip podcast a few weeks back, so go check out that one as well. But just, even thinking about, there were certain things that kind of were benchmarks if you were into metal and hardcore, late 90s, early 2000s, but really in that early 2000s scene. And it was a thing where between the Hellfests, and really New England Metal and Hardcore Fest, and I guess Milwaukee Metal Fest to a degree, although that was not really on my radar for some reason. I remember it existing, but I felt like maybe those bands, from what I remember, were just too heavy. Like it was going to be like brutal death metal and stuff like that, and just bands that I thought I wouldn't like or something. I don't know. It's funny to think back about how we thought of things as a kid versus how we think about them now. But the Metal and Hardcore Festival was always one that I always wanted to go to, and living here in the Midwest, just was not able to go. It wasn't, feasible for me to go for such a long time. I think my wife and I are going to try to go. And there's kind of a few variables if we can get someone to watch the dog, and then as well as getting everything, some time off, at least for the Friday, and then flights and all that kind of stuff. If we're able to manage all those things, hopefully that won't be much of a deterrent. I really would love to go to this festival, and also the Palladium. It's just a legendary venue to me. Some of my favorite band DVDs, like I was saying earlier, were shot at the Palladium. It looks like a great fucking venue, and I've always wanted to go there. There's a handful of venues here in the States that I really want to go check out. The Troc in Philly. I don't think I ever went there. I don't think I was old enough to go when I lived back east. The few shows I do remember going to were more of like stadium type shows. So I don't think I ever went to the Troc. I always wanted to go to the Norva in Virginia. And then really, I think the last one other than Palladium, I think that's it, because I've been to the Masquerade at this point in Atlanta. Been to most of the venues out in LA that were of significance. And yeah, I think I've kind of checked off my bucket list of venues at this point. All that said, let's get into it. Actually, shit, hold on. I just remembered. I did not mention. Scott Lee actually surprised me by being in the group, the thing I use to record everything, StreamYard. Typically, I hop in about 10, maybe 15 minutes before the person, just to get ready, to make sure everything's good to go, all my settings are right, just to make sure all my defaults are where they should be. And when I use my Bluetooth headphones, sometimes it will default to having that be my output and my input device, so my microphone and my headphones. But the funny thing was Scott was already there waiting, and so I was like, oh shit, and just was caught off guard. And then we just started talking, as we typically do. And so therefore, I think the audio, is just from like my Bluetooth headphones, my Beats headphones. So I don't have and sound like this, the microphone I'm using. And for those that are watching the video, it'll be very funny. Because I moved my microphone at a couple of different points, thinking that like it's not directly in my face and that I'm not picking up the best audio. So it's not that bad. I just wanted to give you a heads up that I do know, I am aware. I was not aware in the time, but still a great chat nonetheless. You can still hear me just fine. So enjoy this chat with Scott Lee, and I'll talk to you on the other side of it.
But to answer your question, so I actually very recently, because of doing this show for like almost 7 years now, I really fell out of love of like listening to music because it became a fucking chore to like listen to it in preparation for doing this show. Yep. And it just became this thing where like I've joked for so long, like I love music so much that I went and did all these different facets in it between booking shows, being in a band, writing about it, doing this podcast and so forth. And it has kind of ruined so many facets of the industry for me, because now I can't go to a show without thinking, okay, like this is how many people are in, what was the ticket, what was the guarantee, like what is it, like merch cut happening, like, you know, all these kind of things. And I'm just like breaking it down. And I'm like, I wish I'd never booked a show. I wish I didn't learn about any of this shit, because now it's fucking ruined it for me.
I'm the same way. We went and saw my niece's dance recital, and it was this huge production, and there was 35, 40 skits on it. I thought it was just going to be like, she's 4 years old. I thought it was going to just be her little kids, but no, it's like a whole dance troupe. And I'm sitting there like I started getting bored because I'm just watching, it was a bunch of like 4-year-olds to 50-year-old women and guys dancing. I just started. I'm like, all right, there's $20 a ticket. Looks like you got 600 people in here. Wonder what the budget is. What's this? 2 detail cops. I'm trying to break this down in my mind, how much money these people are making. They're doing 2 nights of this whole thing. And I'm like, damn, they probably made a pretty penny off these kids, I'm like, damn. And I know it costs a lot of money to do the whole dance recital, to go to those classes. I don't know. That's where my mind goes with being a promoter, doing this and doing the whole thing. So I do understand what you're saying. It's like going to a show. It's like, it's like, all right, what's this? How's this? How are you getting here? Blah, blah, blah. You read through the whole thing. You know what I mean? It's definitely, I get where you're coming from is my point.
Well, I mean, it's something that I've always wanted to do, and it's kind of fitting because when I started the show, one of the first people I wanted to have on was this gentleman, Matt Dalton, who used to do Dirt Fest. I don't know if you remember that at all.
Yeah. Yep.
And so when I wanted to start the show, like the idea of putting on a yearly festival intrigued me because I understand what it looked like when, like, I'm not a venue, but it's like I understood what it was like getting the emails, trying to get holds on dates, trying to figure out, packages and money and all that kind of stuff. But it's like the idea of a yearly festival, I know it has to be, it's like just a 20, like I would imagine it's like a 24/7, 365 kind of thing where it's like, it's always moving. And by the time you're at the festival you're doing, you're probably already talking to or have already talked to people who are like, we can't do it this year, but we have, or someone with another band, hey, we're about to put something else next year. Is there like, and you're probably already wheeling 100%. And dealing at the festival. So it's like, to me,
I'm doing it. We were doing it while we were booking this festival for next year. Yeah. That's how it comes down to play. You know what I'm saying? So it's like looking at everything in perspective, like what records, who's doing this, what's happening, blah, blah, blah. And like, or who's going to come back, who's got an anniversary record, who's got whatever. That's what we're looking at. It's like, well, I'm not going to mention the band name. I had 7 people call me about this one band, and people I respected and love in the industry and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, they're not playing this year. They're going to play next year because it's the anniversary of their biggest record. I'm not, blah, blah, blah. So making, like, that's what we're thinking of. When we originally did the festival, the whole story about how this came about was I went, when I worked with Shadows Fall back in the day, I got them on the Milwaukee Metal Fest with the Jack Koshik version. And we went there, and a man that will not be named got us on the festival. And we played, and it was just like, it was annoying. People were just, it was such a bad fucking vibe. And like, it was just like, and me and Matt were walking around handing out the first record, giving it to people, and just people just throwing it, like, whatever, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, damn. And we were driving home from Milwaukee, and Matt and I were just talking. I was driving, or he was driving, and I was talking to him. He's like, you can do this. You know that. You can do like a big, huge metal festival. And I did something prior to it called the Really Loud Music Festival with a couple of good friends of mine, Mike Mannix and Matt Pike, not the guitar player from High on Fire, but the
High on Fire. Okay.
Not him. The
other guy. Yep.
And there's this thing called the Really Loud Music Festival, and it was a really good time. We did something like that, but we brought, so, Matt and I are talking about it. I'm like, yeah, we could do something like that. And I'm like, I went and talked to John Peters at Max Concerts. And he's like, hey, we're taking over the Worcester Palladium for booking, blah, blah, blah. And did a walkthrough with him. And I'm like, oh, shit. And I went to shows there. Like, I saw Sam Black Shirts there in Slapshot, I think. I don't remember the year. Don't ask. And I was like, but there's a small room upstairs, and it was a dance room. But it's a foyer going to the balcony. I'm like, we could make this into a second stage. This will be great. Yeah, blah, blah. So we did that. And then we started doing shows there. And then we started doing the festival. And it all worked itself out. And so it came from, like, the idea came from a long ride from Milwaukee Metal Fest, basically. And it was just like putting it together.
I think the thing that's interesting when I talk to, almost anyone really in doing this, the thing that I always kind of latch on to is like how no one really knew that this was the thing they were going to be doing. Like putting on a festival, being responsible for everything that's involved in it. Like, I'm sure, like, the first time you were doing it, you were like, I don't know, I'm just gonna wing it. And then it just kept growing and growing and growing and becoming this thing. But it's funny to think about all the things that you probably had to learn along the way, like the business side of shit, where you're just like, I didn't give a fuck about contracts or getting like food vendors or any of this kind, like any of these kind of things that you probably didn't think you would have to know, because you're like, I just like music and I like bands and these are my friends and I want to have a cool show with them on it. And now it's turned into a fucking business.
I mean, I was involved with the business before doing the festival. I was already a promoter, and so we knew basically what we had to do, how to do this. But I mean, man, we didn't have fucking wristbands the first year. We didn't. We were handing out fucking zip ties. No joke. No fucking joke. Not even kidding. And then a friend of mine, good friend of mine, he was like, he got the clue and he went, "Oh, I got zip ties in my car. I can just sell these zip ties in the parking lot." So there's people selling zip ties to come to metal. That's a true story. I can't tell you the names of people involved. I won't route them out, but it's true. Yeah, man, we built the formula. We built some things up, and we made some, crucial mistakes. But we also made some really cool mistakes that turned into very cool things. It's like,
do you have a for instance?
We tried to do a third stage at another venue down the street. And that turned into stupid. It was just dumb. Bad idea. We were trying to do like 3 days. And it was like, first year was like 3 days. We're like, no, we're going to die. It was a bad idea. And like, we got it down to like, okay, we're going to do a pre-party day. And then we'll do Saturday and Sunday. You know what I mean? So that's why we just build the formula. It's like what we tried to do with the Palladium, Worcester Palladium, and we tried to make it a European festival with 2,500 people. That's what we tried to do. And we did the DVDs, we did everything. We made it look bigger than fucking life. And that's what was our goal. And it worked. And there was no festivals here like that. And then suddenly festivals came popping up, and it was like, and it just became, it was, people were offering money, bigger money, this, that, and the other thing. And like, we did a really good job for about 15 years of making this whole thing work together and just try to put the best show we could put on without increasing the ticket price, doing this. And we did a great job with it. And like, that was I was like, we can't do this anymore in here. You're not going to get the best bang for your buck. You're not going to get the bands what you want to do, because you're going to, it's inflation. Band prices go up, everything goes up. So that's why I stopped doing it in the first place. And to bring it back, we did a thing last year called Tattoo the Earth. Yeah. And I brought, it was like, me and Justin Leach from Mass Concerts put it all together, and with John Peters, and it was like, we had a great time. It was so much fun. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's talk about Metal Fest. So that was outside with 2 stages. Now, Metal Fest this year is outside with 2 stages as well. And we're going to be doing the small stage inside.
Okay.
So basically that, that's going to be like, might have some surprises in there. Might have a couple of interesting stuff, but it's going to be in there like a lot of like up and coming bands. Like it was, it's a development stage, but we want to give that place, people are going to be jumping off of everything. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be exciting. And then the outside is going to have, the big stages where, it's going to be a huge concert type of thing. It's going to be awesome.
So a couple questions out of that, and I'll start with this one just because it's something that just popped in my head, but you're talking about the outdoor stage. Now, I know here with the Intersection, they're one of the only venues outside of now, I guess, the Crowfoot and Pontiac, where they kind of have an outdoor area to hold bigger shows and so forth. And I know we have, like I said, the one outside of the lot in the Intersection. The only show that I know of, just maybe because of how monumental it was for the band, was the Ghost Inside show that was out there at the Palladium outside.
There was something else there that was really big too. The Have Heart. Okay. The Have Heart.
Oh, okay. Yep, the reunion. Yeah, So I guess that does answer my question. Is that something that the Palladium has expanded? Is that something recent, or is it been going on for quite a while?
Last 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Some situations came about, and it's like got permission from the city, doing some stuff, and yeah, man, it's great. Went and saw Weezer there the other day. It was outside. It was 7,000 people. It was great.
I wondered where that was because my friend Frank's on that tour right now, so I've been seeing like every day him updating, posting stuff on from that. You might actually know him because I think they actually did play one of the festivals back in the day when he was the vocalist for The World We Knew.
Oh, Frank, Dumb Frankie.
Yeah.
Frank.
Yeah. It's funny how he has so many nicknames for so many different people that I know that know him.
Listen, I love Frank. He's great. He's just Dumb Frankie, you know.
Well, it was like Patrick from Ice Nine, ex Affiance, or I guess still Affiance technically, was like we were all hanging out one day and he was like Spaghetti Frank, and I was like, what?
Yeah, I heard that too. I call him Dumb Frank. I love him. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he absolutely does. It's looking at this festival though, like something that I think was always interesting to me was how it felt. And I know this is going to sound like very like no shit, obviously, but like when you look back at the festival lineups and you think about, you know, like Lamb of God is your like headliner on your Saturday for this year, and like you see like Hatebreed and Shadows Fall and some of these bands, and to think of like how I don't want to call them baby bands, but like that they were kind of like you had them when they weren't really the bands they have become.
Call them baby bands.
Okay.
They were baby. Lamb of God played the first time for the festival at 1:00 in the afternoon, straight up. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's these bands like Hatebreed. You know that third stage that I talked about? They played that third stage one year, and then yeah, it's like this is how this grows. This whole community grows. You know what I mean? Like followers, you know, making, you know, playing 1:00 in the afternoon New England Metal and Hardcore Festival. Now you're headlining, you know, the return of the New England Metal and Hardcore Festival for Lamb of God. They're a great band. They've always been a great band. They're great human beings. All of them that have been involved with it. It's like it's so cool to see that, like knowing, like, damn, you played at 1:00 in the afternoon Saturday. Now you headlining the motherfucking thing. It's great. It's awesome. It's
Well, I was going to say, to me, I feel like it showcases like when I think there's certain eras of hardcore metal and so forth, especially like that East Coast stuff. It's like, you know, I think of like the Hellfest and stuff like that. Like I never went, but because of the DVDs, you got to like experience it as best as you could before the internet became what it is now. And same with like the New England Metal and Hardcore festivals, either between the band DVDs or the DVDs subsequently that you released of some of the shows, that it always felt like such a tight-knit community. Like it was almost like the excuse where everyone's like, oh, fuck, like, oh, you're playing this? Oh, well, you know, we're going to get in some trouble tonight. Like that it felt bigger. That it felt bigger than just another festival. Like it felt like a family gathering of sorts. And I feel like when I see the lineup now, I feel like that's the thing that like is awesome about it. Like you had a 5-year hiatus basically, if math is right. And to see all the bands that are on it, it's like it's still doing the thing that I feel like it does, where it's the legacy of the festival, and you have now these bands that are in some instances becoming legacy bands. And then you're still supporting the up and coming bands as well. So it feels like it's this thing where it feels so like a time capsule of sorts. Like when I see like the bands and I think of it, it's like this is exactly what I would expect it to be, because it's the mainstays that are always there. That when I think of New England Metal and Hardcore Festival, it's these things. I don't know if Mike D did any of the graphic design work for this, but like that wouldn't surprise me if any of that shit, because like I used to see him always post like got the new ad mat for the whatever, and like it's just the things that you expect year in and year out from this festival. And it's nice to see that like it's coming back and it has all of those same elements that always drew me to wanting to go to one.
Mike D is doing a shirt, and we're going to have a beer for the festival, and I'm having him, we're talking about him designing the beer can for the festival. The beer is coming from a company out here in Western Mass called Tim Bridge Brewery, which Joe from Within the Ruins, it's his brewery.
Tyler. Brewery. No, I know them from Tyler.
Yeah. And but yeah, I talked, and we're also talking to him. I'm talking to him and Jeremy Saffer about doing like kind of a museum.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, so we're talking about that, and yeah, Mike D's artwork is always like part of this whole festival. It's you know, the early years, you know, it's great, love it. I'm very excited about having him. I talked to him today. In fact, I was like, yeah, you know, we're talking about the beer can and stuff like that, so that was exciting. But yeah, man, like looking at all this stuff and like, I mean, I never putting this together. I didn't think it was going to be this big. I never thought it would be like I never thought we'd do DVDs. I never thought we'd do anything like that. And it's like, people look at this, it's like, oh, it's our weekend away. It's our this. It's our summer. It's our metal and hardcore summer camp. Yeah. It's like somebody even said it's like it's the metal and hardcore gathering of the Juggalos, but the metal and hardcore version. And I'm like, I don't know.
How many buttholes do you see at this festival?
Yeah. I don't know about that. I don't know some wacky shit, but like it's pretty exciting. It's like I didn't know it was gonna be like this. You know what I mean? It's like. It's pretty cool. I'm really happy we're doing it outside. You know what I mean? I think hopefully it doesn't rain. But
I think the thing too that when getting the opportunity to talk to you, kind of segue a little bit away from the festival itself. But when I got the email and they're like, hey, we have Scott available, and I was like, yo, this is be rad because like when I started doing this show, there were like a handful of people because the show started very DIY. I just slid into people's DMs. Like it kind of was like, hey, do you know so-and-so? Can you help me get so-and-so? And there was like a hot minute where I was like, oh, it'd be really interesting to get Scott because like I just knew you from like all these DVDs and you seemed like a rad fucking like a good time, had plenty of stories, and I was like, that's the kind of like energy and vibe I wanted on this show. But I think the other thing too, as I'm now older and can kind of look at something from a different perspective. Was it hard ever to maintain the friendships when you're starting to mix business and friendships together?
Yes and no. To be honest with you, just trying to be the best human being you can be, but also keeping in mind that you have a business aspect of it. And if people don't, have I lost friends because of this? I wouldn't say that. Have I gotten into arguments with friends? Yeah. Oh, wholeheartedly. But just gotta keep your eye on the prize and try to be the best human being you can be. That's it. And you gotta realize this whole thing, metal and hardcore, nobody's gonna, it's not rocket science. We're not curing cancer here. We're doing something that's trying to, give people joy or release. It's not trying to. It's like it's having a good time. You know what I mean? It's like. I think that's one thing, but to have I told people to go fuck their mother? 150%, 150%. It's just like and I still have great relationships with those people too. You know what I mean? Have people told me to eat shit? Yeah, of course. It's just it's part of the game, but just got to be a good human being. Just got to put your money where your mouth is, and just try to do the best thing you can do, and not rip anybody off.
Without necessarily naming names, but I'll at least say for those listening, it was someone who was on this show who used to be involved in some of the other festivals that were out that way and owned a label. But I think that's always the interesting thing about that is like everyone kind of starts off their journey, it seems, and like I was saying in the beginning, like starts off this journey kind of being a fan or like just wanting to do and be a part of this. And then as you kind of start getting more into it and kind of making a career out of it, it kind of can turn well, you're my friend and we're just doing this shit. So all of a sudden it's like, dude, like kind of need to pay me, or like, there becomes real shit involved. And all of a sudden it's like, well, I thought you're my friend. You're like, I am still your friend. However, this is also a business or I'm doing this job for you and it requires you to pay me or to do this thing or whatever. And I know that like, there have been times that it had like, even on the small scale of what I've done, like I've had to piss people off because they're like, well, you owe me this. And I'm like, no, I don't. Like you signed a contract, it said this and these were the terms, you agreed to it. Now like the day of, like you want to change everything, and no, I'm not fucking doing that. So sorry, tough shit.
This is what it is. It's like whatever the piece of paper says, the email that you signed off on is what it is. Bottom line. Yeah. It's like that's what I always agree to. Trying to make this all work. You can't be a scumbag in this business because the business is so small. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like
Well, I was to say, how many people that have already name dropped that that I'm like, yeah, these are good friends of mine. So it's like, like that's how not far removed this industry as a whole really has been, as I've learned. It's like, thankfully, I've been a shitty person and I've been a bad person. I mean, even like having just had Mike D back on, I posted the episode a week or so ago, but it was a thing where like he got into some shit from saying something on the episode, and I it was so early on in the show that I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, like a true viral moment. But then because
what do you say?
he basically was talking about how they were working on a song with WWE and it was shit, and they were finally getting it to like where it wasn't. But he was explaining the process of how when WWE finally reaches out to outside musicians, this is the process. And I thought it was really cool as someone who really, at the time, that wasn't really known how bands got involved with doing stuff, because typically at that point they were songs that already existed, like Limp Bizkit, Kid Rock for Undertaker. Like those were songs that were on those records. WWE probably just hit them up and were like, "Hey, we'd like to use these. How much is it going to cost, or whatever?" So to find out that like Mike and Killswitch dudes were doing a song, that it was more of like oh shit, okay, like that's interesting. But that was where I really learned that news sites will scour and pick through some shit, because like,
oh yeah,
like I was under the radar. So like me getting Mike D through like Josh, and like through basically like Josh and another friend of the band, it was like a thing where I was like, oh, this is like cool opportunity for me. People find out about the show, but I was seeing the other side of it where it's like the music side was one thing, but then all the wrestling side of shit, like that started picking up on it. Like it truly went fucking viral. And it was a thing where I remember seeing Adam D on a Reddit AMA, and someone's like, what's going on with that WWE song? And he goes, oh, Mike D talked some shit about it on a podcast, and they fucking took it from us. And I felt really bad because I was like, fuck, like it really sucked. And it made me realize, like, and that's something Mike and I ended up talking about on this last chat, was that words, there's intentions and there's how you communicate, and that sometimes even if you have no maliciousness in what you're saying, that you have to be aware of someone else may take it a different way, and that it can have ramifications that are negative and aren't the ones you want. But it's also in how do you deal with that? How do you grow beyond that? And so it was kind of a really good moment to kind of sort of connect with Mike and apologize, first of all, for my hand in it, even though I didn't really do anything. But just to apologize that it's like, I maybe should have known to take that out. And like now when there's something said, sometimes I'll be like, you want me to take that out just so like that doesn't happen? And I think that's just getting older. I think that's the part of, as I now do this, it's like you never know who's fucking listening. You never know what will get back to who, because this industry is so fucking small.
Yeah, 100%. It's like you have to like watch what you say around things, watch what you say, like watch what you're doing, like in every which way, shape, or form. I tell I manage a bunch of bands, and it's just like, you got to be careful with everything when they're saying, talking about whatever. It's like I don't know. It's just the world we're in right now. You know what I mean? It's like anything. People use anything for clickbait and anything. Every morning I'll sit there and scroll through my Facebook or scroll through this, and it's all clickbait. A lot of it's just fucking clickbait. It's just like, why do I do this? And it's like, I don't know. I just think it's kind of junky, but it's what we have to do right now. It's what people are doing to make a buck. So
yeah. That was before I switched the name, because initially the show just had a placeholder name of John's Untitled Podcast, and then I got a co-host for a little bit, and I was like, I feel like a dick having my name and face on this thing with somebody else. And then so we were brainstorming names, and he goes, why don't you call it Clickbaity, because that's my last name is Beatty. And I was like, dude, no one will fucking come on that show. But now my wife has made the joke. She was like, because she, through me having the different friends and being privy to some of the conversations we have, obviously not on record, but like when people roll through town and they're like, oh, this thing or these people or whatever, she was like, if we ever get a divorce, I'm calling and making a show called Clickbaity, and I'm just fucking ruining everybody. And I was like, oh, fuck, you could do that, actually, now that I think about it.
Oh, no. Be nice to her.
No, absolutely. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and I guess maybe I might be misinformed, but were you the person who started Sound Rink, or did you just work for the company?
Oh, no. Sound Rink was started by my good friends Cody DeLong, who used to work at the Kenmore agency with Matt Pike, not from High on Fire, but the agent. and my friend Jason Majot, who he works for Rock Nation, and
Okay.
he also manages some great bands. One of them being Spirit Box,
Hmm.
and we started working together on that. Oh fuck, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a brainchild of DeLong, and then we just went to it, and there was nothing like it at the time. You know what I mean?
No.
Now there's 100 million wannabe companies, and it's just like, yeah, we're the number two independent, or maybe even number one independent VIP ticketing company in the world. I don't know where that is, but yeah, we started that a while ago. That was Jason was working with Azalea Dying, and we had a meeting at the Pizzeria Uno's across from the Worcester Palladium, and we put it together like on a cocktail napkin, the whole idea and what we're trying to do. So that's where it started.
Sounds like
Pizzeria
Sounds like
Uno's.
my wife and I, whenever we go to one of our local bars here, we plan trips, and it's always on cocktail napkins. We'll do the whole itinerary. But no, because Soundrink, I remember when I heard about it, because it was one of those things where, originally I'm from the East Coast, like out in Delaware, which, I mean, not a hotbed, or it wasn't at the time. It's weird to see, what is it, Firefly Festival or whatever the fuck's out there now. That it's weird
Delaware?
to see that.
What was that band from the hardcore band from Delaware? Clutch is from Delaware, right? Yeah, they're from Delaware.
Who was it?
Clutch is from Delaware, right?
No, they're from Virginia.
Virginia.
I think they're from the Richmond area.
Yeah, you're right. My bad. Delaware. I don't know what.
I can't think of anyone from Delaware personally.
From Delaware.
At least not one. But it was one of those things where thinking about knowing when I started be kind of paying attention to the scene and stuff like that, in the late 90s, early 2000s and so forth. And your name came up with a lot of, like I said, seeing you on all these DVDs, seeing you in thank you liner notes and stuff like that, because those are the things that's how we learned who people were, bands and all that kind of stuff. It was an ancillary avenue to learn all these things.
Let me ask you a question real quick about liner notes. Did you read all your liner notes while you were taking a crap?
No,
I did.
I would read it while I was had the CD in, listening to it for the first time.
I was just using it for toilet material before iPhones came up. Huh?
I mean, eventually, I think I did that because I used to have a boombox in the shower. So when I shower, so then I would have CDs in there with me. But no, typically first listener. So I'd usually always sit there with the booklet and just kind of take it all in. But it was a thing where, like I said, knowing you, I knew of you, I knew who you were. But when I heard when Soundrink was starting, I had thought that it was okay, Scott's leaving the East Coast. He's going out west. He's starting this other venture, and it seemed like this thing to me where it was oh, that's really interesting, because I don't know that people would pay money for a meet and greet, because it was still kind of around the time of, especially with the internet kind of being young, that it's people could be oh shit, the band's staying here, and you could find the information or know that you could wait in line before the venue opened or stay after near the buses or whatever, and would be able to meet the bands and so forth. So the idea of the idea of a paid meet and greet, and what did it look like? And I remember just thinking, I don't know how well that's going to do. I don't know if it's going to be sustainable for very long. And here we are all these years later. And I think about it all the time when I see them. And I'm like, God damn, Scott was ahead of it. He knew.
It was really interesting because we see these people doing these meet and greets, and they were just the unorganized crap, and it was terrible, and it was done by just, I don't know, dumb managers that were doing it. And doing the Palladium and doing shows for so long, just I'm watching it, I'm like, you got to do this. And we organized it. We did this. We used it, developing
zip ties.
Yeah, zip ties. It all goes back to zip ties. But doing all the, putting this in perspective, and it's just yeah, man, people want to meet people and get shit signed, and ask the couple dumb questions, or do this, or find out about their. It gets you closer to the artist. Meet you. I just witnessed a meet and greet Q&A with Currents. Currents just did headline tour, sold out headline tour, and it's like, the first day was at the Palladium upstairs, and then I went to the New York show, and I'm watching these Q&As, and these fans love it, and they're like, hey, they're asking the questions, doing this, how's it, and it just makes the experience of going to a concert so much better for a lot of these people. It helps the bands, it makes more money for the bands, it makes more money for, it's a good thing for all the way around. It's another marketing tool for promoters, for to get the word out about shows. It's not a bad thing at all. And it's like, oh, I'm not going to spend that much money to meet this. I'm like, you're going to spend that much money. You're getting the T-shirt, the poster, the laminate, the lanyard, and you get to meet the band. And you're going to buy a T-shirt anyways. You're going to do this. It enhances the whole experience. It's a great thing, I think.
I do,
and it works.
It has been, yeah. I was just saying, it has been interesting to see how it's grown. How I feel like it's almost created. Like a friend of mine is huge into Coheed, and was talking about how she has been like doing the meet and greet things at some of the different events and so forth, and I guess upgrading the meet and greet package or something. I don't really know. I don't know their what their meet and greet packages look like, but it's a thing where like kind of hearing her discuss like, oh, I met so and so, or a friend of mine and I who I met through this Facebook group thing, whatever. And it's just so interesting to see how like even the meet and greet industry has created almost like a subset of like super fans that then become friends, and it's like an event and they go do this thing, and it's really interesting. And to even kind of take it a step further and see like what Ice Nine has done, where it's like it's almost how like their convention I feel like was born out of the things they do at the meet and greet, but let's make it a whole convention at this point.
Oh yeah, Spencer and his team are incredible people, brilliant people. And he is this. That whole what Einstein kills and what they do is just, they're so smart, incredible people. It's just great that with the convention they're doing and everything like that, working with different people. It's I'm not just saying that because they're a Sound Rink client. I'm just saying that because I've known Spencer for a long time. He's a great guy. I won't call him a kid. He's definitely a man. But
no, I think if you're around roughly our age, within a probably 10, 20 year window, you call everyone kid, regardless of how old they are. No, I mean, actually, I'm going to share this story just for context, but I want to pose to you, like, if you had this moment, or have had this moment several times, I would imagine, over your career. But I remember being friends with Porter and the Atreyu dudes, like going to see them when Ice Nine was the second of four on the Memphis Mayflower run they did. Uh-huh. And I remember hearing the buzz about Ice Nine, had seen the name, and they used to play the 400 cap room here at the intersection a shitload of times over their like 10-year career. And I remember just something felt different. Like there was an era, like an aura about the show before it even started. The merch line was 20, 30 deep the entire time. And as soon as most of the set they were playing was Horrorwood, and like everyone knew the fucking songs like by heart, and it had only been out for like a couple of weeks, if memory serves. And I remember just being like, this feels important. Like something is happening right now. This is the precipice of this band becoming something big. And there's really only been probably two other times I can't necessarily say the band, I can say a tour I saw where I was like, something's happening right here. One was Atreyu on the Curse tour when they were doing that. Like that felt big and important for the scene. And then it was the As Lay Dying Unearth, or no, not Unearth. It was As Lay Dying, Soilwork, and Killswitch tour. Mm-hmm. And I remember that feeling very important because it was kind of like right before Shadows of Security and End of Heartache was out and Soilwork was on Stabbing the Drama. I think it was about to come out. And like that felt real fucking important for the scene because like it just felt big. And it's like I remember those tours and I remember those moments feeling like looking around going like something is about to happen with these bands. I don't know in what capacity or anything like that, but like this feels like the beginning of something. I would imagine with the festival and stuff like that, like you've had plenty of those experiences. Are there any that come to mind when you hear a story like that where you're like, oh, I remember when this band was like, I knew this was about to pop off?
Yeah. Lamb of God was one. There's a couple. Man. Fucking got me thinking. Hold on a second. Oh man, like I can't think of the band name. Holy shit! Oh my god, I can't think of. They got the bat for the logo.
Oh, Avenged Sevenfold.
Yes. They played upstairs at the Palladium, and I watched that. I was like, "Yeah, this is gonna be a big band. Just watch this. It's gonna be another one." I saw Seven Dust open for the Nixons.
Great
That was
band.
another one. Who else? Saw this band Tool open up for a band called Electric Love Hogs in Arizona once. I was like, that's gonna be a big band. Also, Rage Against the Machine was on that bill. It was like Electric Love Hogs, Rage Against the Machine, and Tool. It's
Wow.
It's a real show. What else? Man.
See, it's weird, like you say Tool, and like the first thing I always go back to is when I saw Tool on the Lateralis tour with Meshuggah opening up, and I don't know if it was the shit venue. I don't know if it was the fact that 8-string guitars just didn't sound good back then because they were still figuring out the frequencies and such in a live setting. But I remember just being like, this band sucks.
What, to Meshuggah?
And yeah, it just sounded terrible, and it was not good. And I just remember being like, this band sucks. And then I got the Ozfest sampler, and I think they were on the I think New Millennium Cyanide Christ was the song on that sampler. And I was like, fuck, this band's awesome. Why weren't they this good when I saw them?
I used to own a record store, and we did an in-store with Meshuggah the day they played UMass. And then we went and saw Meshuggah play, and I was like, this is great. I loved it. And nobody understood it. Everybody was just like, why? Excuse me. What is this? What is this band? And it was like huge Civic Center. And I was like, this is amazing. And I booked them before that for Metal Fest. And like, it was just, oh man. I also, okay, this is here to answer your question previously. I did a show at this place in Springfield, Massachusetts called the Infinity, rest in peace. And it was, Cannibal Corpse, Angel Corpse, Overcast, and Shai Hulud.
Wow, okay.
Okay. All right, follow this. I got a phone call from somebody that will not be named going, hey, can you add this band on the show, on your Cannibal Corpse show? And I'm like, who's the fucking band? What is this? He's like, well, it's a band called Meshuggah. They're trying to do a warm-up show for their festival. They're playing Milwaukee Metal Fest. Can you add them to your show? And I'm like, it was back when it was like I had a landline. And I'm like, hold on. And I got really excited. I'm like, ooh, because I knew what Meshuggah was. I knew exactly what this was. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I'll put them on. I'm like, yeah, I'll put them on. I go, how much do you want? He said, can you give them $200? And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. So I did it, and they came and they went direct support. They went right before Cannibal Corpse. Or no, right before Angel Corpse, excuse me. And people were just freaked out because, this is the first time Meshuggah played in the United States was a little club in Springfield, Massachusetts.
I think those kind of shows are like just so rad. Like, I think one of my favorite shows for a multitude of reasons was going to finally see Turbo Negro on my birthday, like my 24th birthday. And I still haven't seen them since because they don't really play the Midwest ever when they do tour the States. And it was just so fucking cool to see them. And like what made it even more special, like for me, I don't know if people are going to give a fuck, but like Mondo Generator was the opening band, and it was right after Nick Oliveri got kicked out of Queens. So all he played was Queen, like all the Queen stuff he wrote and all the Caius stuff that he wrote, and then like one or two Mondo Generator songs. And it was like the coolest fucking thing in a tiny dive bar in Detroit. And it was just like one of those things where it's like, dude, why aren't there more fucking people here? This is so fucking rad.
Oh man, it's crazy because like I did this other club in Springfield called Fat Cats, and we did everything there. We did Glass Jaw Converge, we did Lamb of God, Shadows Fall, we did 1 million Kill Switch shows, like we did Hatebreed shows. We did hate breed. We had a hate breed riot there. It was great. It was amazing. and yeah, it like, but like watching a lot of these bands come up, we're like, holy shit, they played this 300 capacity room that we put 500 people in all the time, and it was just like in Springfield, Massachusetts, like holy shit, and like those were like, it was awesome. Those are awesome shows. Like I did, doing shows with like, there's a local band called Light as a Language and Blood Has Been Shed. You know what I mean? And it'd be like, there'd always be like 350 people there. It was always packed. It was great. Good time. Did an Overcast reunion, like the first reunion they did, came back, and it was amazing. And like it was like we sold 600 tickets to a 300 capacity room, and it was, you do the math. And yeah, it's just like those shows like are like, oh man, they're so good. You gotta like, that's what this is here for. That's putting on a lot of those shows. I'm very, very proud of. Like another, like a band that I'm proud of for Metal Fest is Hunter Demons. It's like the first record lineup. It's amazing. Bruce has been a good friend of mine for years. Reese and all those guys. Very excited about that. That's going to be awesome. And like, it's the whole like, I was talking to, I forgot who I was talking about this. I go, this is the best Metal Fest lineup we've ever done, top to bottom. And they're like, you really think so? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, it's got Lamb of God. It's got Parkway Drive. It's got Shadows Fall. It's got like, it's like, Black Dahlia Murder. Fuck. Amazing. It's like Hatebreed, Terror. It's got everything. It's, it's like, it's amazing. I'm very, very excited about this. It's like, I don't think there's like another festival unless you go to Europe like this. You know what I mean?
I think that's been the thing. I was talking to Kristen. I think her last name's Torres. I would just always see like the people's first names or like at blah blah blah. But she was on Twitter the other day, was like, Bloodstock media applications are open, and then she was like looking forward to whatever, I don't know. And then I was like, it's my goal at some point to be invited or to at least get approved to go to an overseas festival. Like, thankfully the handful of festivals I've gotten to cover here in the States I've been spoiled. They've mostly been Danny Wimmer Presents festivals, which going to anything that's not been that has been really eye-opening to see how well those fucking things are ran. Because you're just like, you go to anything else and you're like, this is a shit show. But that's just from my perspective. I can't speak from what it's like as the band and how they get treated and all that kind of stuff. But something kind of a different take on the question I just kind of asked about, like, what's a band that you saw that you were like, holy shit, this is like going to be awesome. I remember, actually, I think it might have culminated at their appearance at a New England Metal Festival back in like 2012 or 13. The guys in Wilson. And I remember, I know it was the year Bleeding Through was on, because Jason, their guitar player, was like, oh man, I've always wanted to see Bleeding Through. I never got to see him. And then he FaceTimed me during Love Lost in the Hail of Gunfire when he was watching them at the Palladium, which was super rad. I'll never forget it. But it's a thing where, like, I remember seeing those guys because they're from Lansing. And it was a thing where I saw them all the time as a local band. And I remember seeing them going like, this is a band that, barring any fights, any bullshit, like, they have something. They have the it factor that, like, should take them somewhere. And I remember after they would do some regional touring, I'd see them in it, and there was that moment where you're like, oh, this isn't that local band anymore. This is a band. This is like a band who has learned how to put on a show. And this is the band that now can garner money for people to go see them, and not just be like, oh yeah, they're the band that, like, we'll just guest list everyone because no one wants to pay to see them.
Yeah.
And it made me think, like, of all the shows that you probably have booked over the years, like, was it a trip for you to see that with probably like Lamb of God or Killswitch or any of those, where it's like they'd go do a tour or whatever, they'd come back and you're like, oh fuck, like, you're a real band now?
they were always real bands to me, to be honest with you. They were because I would try to put them on supporting situations. When I had bands coming through, it was really funny. Do you know any Western Mass metalcore or hardcore history at all?
I mean, kind of through obviously like Tyler and stuff like that, and just a lot of the different bands that I know that are incestuous as shit.
You know Aftershock, right?
Oh yeah, of course. Yep, I have a couple Aftershock records actually.
Okay, cool. So Aftershock. So I had a show with this small band called Sepultura upstairs at the Palladium, and I begged and pleaded to get them on as the opening act, and it was basically done. And then they canceled the tour, and the band ended up breaking up because whatever they did.
So this obviously is when they had Max, like the original lineup.
Yeah. Okay. It was the Roots lineup. Yeah.
Okay.
And like, yeah. So I really looked at these bands as like real bands. You know what I mean? And like, I always tried to like put all like help out as much as I could with doing things like that. It's like, I'm a big UFC fan, and I don't know if you're familiar with Zeus, the producer.
100%.
Okay, cool. He comes over and we watch the fights together. He calls my house Club Lee, and we all watch fights, and we're talking. And he was in a band called Doom Nation, and he's like, yeah, I remember that time you put us on with Deftones at the Palladium. I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh yeah, that was the greatest show we ever did. I was like, what's your show? He's like, yeah, but yeah, like, I always looked at these bands as like, okay, cool. They're not just. I mean, granted, there's some shit local bands. Don't get me wrong, but like bands like Aftershock, Kill Switch, Shadows Fall, All That Remains, Unearth, like all those bands I looked at, like Hatebreed. It's like they were real bands. A lot of these bands, like Converge, was always a real band to me because they would do tours. They would go out and tour,
right?
And like, yeah, I mean, like this is like real stuff. Like, I always looked at these bands as never like a local band. You know what I mean? They're always going to do something. You know, majority of them, good amount from Western Mass did something. You know what I mean? Or had a chance to do something. You know, and like
it's like,
I don't know. I feel good about helping them. You know what I mean? It makes me feel good that I help careers in some way, shape, or form.
Well, it's like so weird because it's like I remember, like once I moved away. Like, it's funny, like, growing up, most of what I got into from a musical perspective that wasn't, like, the stuff I was seeing on MTV or, like, my parents was a lot of, like, what the people I was going to school with were bringing back from, like, their older siblings or siblings that lived, like, in Mass, lived over in, New York or wherever, or even Philly, and was the thing where it's, like, I was more brought, like, hip-hop and R&B. And so moving out to the Midwest when I did, I remember, I talk about this quite a bit where it's like the culture shock of just being from the East Coast and then moving to the Midwest where you're like, what the fuck is this? I remember the first thing that was uniquely from like here was someone like was like, oh, check this out. And I was listening to it. I was like, this is garbage. What the fuck is this? And someone's like, this is cool, right? This is ICP. It's their Tunnel of Love. Like it's their new EP. And I was like, this ain't it. I don't know. Was not a fan for the longest time.
One year, the Juggalos came to Metal Fest, and they were handing out like they had their like their vans with all the stuff, and they were handing out samplers and everything like that, and it was really funny. Like, what are these people? It was very funny.
It's a thing though. Like, it was interesting to move out here and then to eventually be so enamored with basically the scene that I essentially would have been growing up around if I would have stayed out there between like all the bands you're mentioning. And it's funny because like, you were asking like how familiar am I with like some of the Western Mass scene and stuff like that, like going back to MySpace, and like I would just go down rabbit holes of following the bands who follow the bands who follow the bands, whatever. And I remember, unbeknownst to me, because I didn't know Tyler in this sense, I just had found this band Once Beloved. And I was like, yo, this band's fucking sick. Their album cover looks like Papa Shango to me because, like, I liked wrestling. And I remember messaging them on MySpace, and it happened to be Tyler. And then, like, he and I formed, like, a friendship and shit. And so much so, like, it has still remained all these years. Like, he's the homie. Like, we fucking still hang out and all that kind of stuff. And it's funny to me to like feel like I was a part of a scene that I literally was not there for. But because of the internet and kind of the infancy of what it was, the access that the DVDs and so forth made it feel like you were a part of this scene that was that was popping off. And like I said, knowing how incestuous the fucking scene was, where it's like, you know, like one of my favorite bands, and it's funny when I look back and I tell you the story like that I saw Meshuggah and I was like, I don't fucking like this band, but I love Blood Has Been Shed, and that's still one of my favorite bands. And it's been crazy because like, you know, Justin just posted that him doing Beginner's Luck, and every time like I had Hojo on a while back, and I asked him mainly, I just punished him about Blood Has Been Shed because it's like, you know, I was like, dude, I remember you did an interview with Mike D, and like someone asked you about what this new Blood Has Been Shed record is going to be like, and you said like songs were done and it was like going to be out probably in the next year. That was fucking 12 years ago. Where the fuck is this record? And then some sites picked up on that, and then Corey's kid found me on Instagram or on YouTube. Then I was like, yo, I actually sent your dad a fucking DM like 3 years ago. Please tell him to check it out. Like if he's interested, I would love to have him on. Fast forward like a week, and I got Corey. I've had Justin on, and at this point, it's like I think I can say this. I have a Blood Has Been Shed demo that Corey sent me that he's like, yeah, here's how weird and wild this shit was going to be. And even the demo phase, I was like, what the fuck is this? And it's still a thing that I'm hoping, praying, whatever, the gods will fucking align. I mean, I got to see Botch this year. I went to Seattle and saw them do their reunion. And that was a band that I never thought I'd get to see. I never thought I'd get to see Refused. Like, there's so many bands that broke up right when I got into them that I was like Blood Has Been Shed is like the last one for me.
I was at a, so I was with Zeus, and we were at it was I Am and Kubla Khan and Thy Artist Murder with Webster in Hartford. And
So the recent tour that just went through.
Okay. And we're sitting there, me and Zeus are in front of the house, and I look over, I'm like, Zeus. He's like, what? I think that's Corey. He's like, no. I'm like, yeah. He's like, no. He's like, oh, yeah. He goes, hold on. He goes, he walks over. He's like, yeah, it's Corey. Come over here. Like, we're like hanging out with him. He's like, what? I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, my kid loves the band. I'm like, cool. I'm like, awesome. So we hung out, and like, you know, I go straight up. I asked him to do a reunion, so I don't think I don't know where that's going to leave, but I would love to see a Blood Has Been Shed reunion. I'd pay good money for that.
I mean, it's funny to me because, like, even between talking to everyone in the band, like, they're all, I mean, obviously anyone who knows them, they're all humble as hell, but, like, it's funny that they don't think that, none of them think that they did anything worth still being remembered for all this time later.
No shit. And I'm like, you changed so many motherfucking people with that music. I have a friend of mine. This is a true story. A friend of mine, John Eddy, he's a lighting guy for the Deftones. And he played it for the guitar player for Deftones. He's like, where's this band now? You know, like they're broken up. Like it's the guitar, it's a singer of Killswitch Engage. It's a you know, former singer of Killswitch. It's a drummer of Killswitch. Blah blah blah, and like it's like holy shit, this band could have been huge, and it could have been. It just
I think it still can be. I mean, like I said, I'm looking at what Botch has been doing, and I'm like, that could be Blood Has Been Shed, because I don't think Botch was ever to the level like where they were playing those size rooms. They're selling out that fucking quick. I think, could be wrong, and I don't have money or skin in the game, but I do think Blood Has Been Shed could come back to that kind of a level where they play way bigger rooms than they ever did, especially if you do like, I almost thought I joked with Corey, from God forbid the other day. I was like, goddamn Botch. Like I just went and spent a shitload of money to go see him in Seattle. And I go, then they fucking announced this 2-day tour with Converge and Cave-In. And I go, I've never gotten to see Cave-In or Converge. And I go, so they got me thinking about going to fucking New Jersey on my wife's birthday. Just so I can go see those two.
You should go see that show. Your wife will understand. I think if you did a Blood Has Been Shed show, and it was the only show in New England, and you did it, and there would be 1,500 people at least at that show, 100%. And I think it would be exciting. I was talking to Tommy from Sleeping Giant. I'm a big Sleeping Giant fan, Like, love that band. Not because of the religious, just because they're a good fucking band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's like, you ever book Brothers from Shed, we'll reunite. I'm like, you know how many people will say that? I mean, it'd be incredible. I mean, but the moons have to align and all that bullshit. And I think it's.
I think though, like, because I remember when Tyler was working on his solo record, he was like, "I'm gonna try to get Toby," and I was like, "Dude, Toby doesn't do shit anymore." Like from what from what I've heard, basically after Aftershock was done, he
I
hasn't
offered Aftershock to play Metal Fest. I said no, straight up.
And then he was like, I remember him sending me the file. He's like, "Guess who I got?" And I was like, "How the fuck did you get him?" I was like, "This dude like doesn't do shit." Supposedly.
Toby Duckowitz in Devil's Head Records. There's no like. Acacia Strain's not here without that. You know what I mean?
No.
You know, there's so many different things that band brought, Aftershock brought to. There's no Killswitch Engage. There's no John Donat's Shadows Fall now in Anthrax. There's no Matt Bashan who from Shadows Fall who, you know, there's so many different things that were from that band. You know what I mean? And like that band meant a lot. It didn't do too much. Played in Japan, but played out here a lot. But I mean, damn, man, that band was so fucking good. And I talked to Toby and talked to Adam. We talked to Toby and Adam once in a while. And I'm like, I told him, I'm like, listen, you want to play Metal Fest? I'll give you a bunch of money. Come on. And I don't. You gotta learn the songs. You gotta do this.
Yeah.
You know, old man shit.
I think that's like. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's like what's been stopping a lot of people. I think from some of these things is like, it's like I going back to Blows and Shit. I know like Corey, after it broke again, that I had more information about the unreleased record, what state it was in, if the band would ever get back together, all this kind of stuff. I remember Corey emailing me like a week later after everything. He was like, "Dude, like so many people are like, yo, are you still interested in finishing this record? I forgot we were working on it," you know, because it was kind of a collaborative effort from what he was saying. Like it wasn't just the main guys, it was a bunch of other people. And so he was like, I don't know, this thing might start being a thing again or whatever. And like obviously nothing came of it, but it was a thing where it was really cool to like a week later feel like, yeah, people give a shit, fucking do something because people care. And even at the very least, just throw the fucking demos out there. Like, who cares if they don't sound like a completed record? I don't think anyone's going to give a shit at this point. But it's a thing where it's like, it's just interesting sometimes to in doing these conversations. And like, there's been some of my best episodes. Like, I don't know if you remember this band, Revis. They were kind of like, they were signed to, I think like Sony or whatever. They did a tour with Pearl Jam. They had that song Caught in the Rain. They're on the Punisher soundtrack that had yeah. So like, they had a fucking great sounding record, only put out one record, and then basically just disappeared. And I found the singer on Instagram one day, sent him a DM, had him do my podcast. It was like the first like 30 episodes, so it's kind of rough. But it's funny because like that is one of my like most commented on, most viewed video, like not downloaded episode, but on YouTube. It is like one of my biggest episodes. And it's one of those things where I'm like, sometimes like you may think no one gives a fuck about this thing that you love, but then you see something like that and you're like, no, people really do fuck with this thing. And it's so cool to like find like-minded people like that. But it's also a bummer when you like, probably more so from you, where you're like, hey man, I can do something to where here's a platform for you to play, do this one fucking thing. I'll throw money at it. So it's not like you're just doing it for shits and giggles. And then you're just like, well, no one's probably going to give a fuck. No, I don't want to. And you're like, oh, so annoying.
Oh yeah. It's very annoying. It's you know, it's like doing like I did the Shadows Fall reunion show, and like you know, I was like, we had set up, ready to go. Oh, this thing called COVID happens. Yeah. We postpone, and I'm like, cool. You guys want to do it? Want to try it? We'll see what happens. You know, there's some protocols, whatever. People are going to get COVID. It's going to happen, but you know, do you want to do it? And yeah, and we ended up putting 3,000 people in the Palladium, basically. You know what I mean? And like, it was a great time, but it's like, and it rejuvenated everybody's love for that band. I feel like, you know what I mean? And it was like, and a bunch of people got COVID, but it was still a great time. I think everybody in Darkest Hour got COVID.
Kind of, I guess, piggybacking off of that and getting a little bit serious, just because, I mean, again, kind of, it's so weird because, like, sometimes so the last show I got to see before COVID literally shut down everything was the Killswitch Light the Torch August Burns Red tour. We were the second date of the tour. I remember talking to JB, and we were making fun of it, and then an hour later, I did one with Justin, and in that hour, and like I'm told this story to death, but you haven't heard it, but it was a thing where, like, just being backstage for that hour, where it's like, like, this is, bullshit, it's going to be the flu, not a big deal, to then, like, right before I hit record with Justin, it was like, I think Portland's done. Because out west, they're enforcing, like, 25% cap things and da-da-da-da-da. Oh, now it's not just Portland. Now it's California.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's this. And to, like, even at the end of the night, like, we were supposed to see the tour again less than a week later in Detroit. So, like, saying goodbye to Josh and Kyle, who was filling in for, like, the Torch on drums, and some other people I knew. It was like, hey, man, I'll see you in a week, And I remember my wife being kind of, like, bummed because she was like, can we go? And I was like, no, I'm going to say goodbye real quick. And it took us an extra 10, 20 minutes to do all that. But I'm so glad I did, because literally the next day, everything fucking shut down. And this serious thing I was going to ask you is, with your career being so wrapped up in live music and the entertainment business of it, what was it like going through that for you?
Oh, it sucked, like anybody else. But we did something else, and I pivoted a little bit. I also own a merch company called Downright Merch, and if you own a merch company and you're an e-commerce based company, during COVID, you were blessed by any god that there is, and everybody bought merchandise from the bands. So, yeah, it sucked. It's like, I had my bands couldn't tour, doing this, postpone records, doing that. Sound Rink just fucking pause, but I was blessed in the fact that I had a merchandise company. So it sucked. I looking back going, I have my whole, like everybody else in the world, like, conspiracy, like, what's this fuck? What the fuck? Like, knowing, like, one day COVID's really bad, and then the next day we have a new president. It's okay, and, like, I don't know. That was kind of weird to me, and, like, the whole thing was kind of weird to me, and I just didn't get it, and I still don't get it to this day, and that's not my, whatever. But how did it fucking sucked? It was fucking terrible. Sitting, not seeing people, not doing anything. It's like, I don't know. It was terrible. I'm very much an outgoing person, like to meet friends, go to shows, do things, have a good time, go to dinner, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it sucks. I mean, but I mean, other people had it a lot worse than I did. Don't get me wrong, but.
Right. I think for me, the human side of, and I did chats with with Amy from Adam Splitter and Frank and JB and the other people, where it was just kind of like showcasing what it was doing to people in different facets of the industry, because it's interesting to me. But I also think, to me, as an inquisitive person, it's interesting to me to think about the learning aspect of, okay, this was my livelihood. This is, like, I am Scott Lee. Everyone knows me as Scott Lee from the Palladium, from Sound Rink, from all these things, and they're all based around music. When that's now taken away and you're kind of left with alone, like most of us were, who do you, like, you kind of have to refigure out who the fuck you are, because now the thing you're known for is gone. And so to me, like, when I say, like, it seems like such an obvious question of, like, how was the pandemic for you? Like, yeah, it fucking sucked. It sucked for everybody. But I think the thing that gets interesting about it from a human perspective is, especially for people that were in this industry, is what did it do to you to where you kind of maybe had to go inward and figure out, maybe find a new why find a new purpose, find a new identity that doesn't revolve around this thing that has been your whole identity.
I think that's one of the reasons why I did the Metal Fest again, to be honest with you, because I saw, doing, we did Tattoo of the Earth, like I said, but doing that Shadows Fall show, doing this, you can be taken away from you anytime by whatever, COVID, whatever the fuck you want to call it, in any which way, shape, or form. So, yeah, man, it sucks, but, it's like, I mean, like anybody else, that was a business owner in this whole thing, you pivot, you try to do the best you can. You don't, and that's what I did. We try to do different things. We try to do, it's like doing, live like shows, virtual shows, whatever the fuck you want to call it, doing Q&As. We were doing things like that through Rink and for Downright, and just like, trying to do different, pivoting, trying to make it all work. Yeah, did we all get mad and, run in the woods and punch a bunch of fucking trees and drink a bunch of fucking Jameson? Yeah, I think we all did something like that similar. But, just got to take it for what it is and just work the best you can and make sure to fucking take showers at least 3 times a week,
It's funny, you have said a word repeatedly during that little bit that is something I've talked about so much on the show, is pivoting. Something I've been a firm believer in is, growing up, I always kind of knew I wanted to do something in music, but like it just was music, and when you're a kid, you don't really know anything other than being in a band. You don't understand how far reaching the music industry can be and what you can do within it. And so, I talked about earlier about, it's like, yeah, I did the band thing, kind of wasn't my thing. So I pivoted, and then I started booking shows. I learned how to do that. And then when that kind of wore its welcome out, I pivoted into writing about music, and I wanted to make people feel like they were at shows and the vibe of what was going on. And then when I got just deemed as the metal guy, even though everything I covered was like Janet Jackson, Lil Wayne and stuff like that, like I had more non-metal than I had metal coverage, that I just remember being like, man, fuck this, I'm going to start my own thing, which became this. So I pivoted again, and it just became this thing where, I talk about the importance of understanding, like, if something's not working the way you want it to, don't abandon it, don't quit it. Find the pivot, and then find your lane and find your way through it. And you'll usually be happier in the long run because you'll have found the thing that you were supposed to be doing.
One thing that I've noticed in this business, is like, you cannot like have like one single thing going on. You can't. You shouldn't.
No.
Or as a human being too. Like you could be part of Metallica's management team, but you should do something else to do with it. You should, it's like, I have great partners in all the businesses that I do. I really do. And it's like, whether it's merch company, whether it's Rink, whether it's my management, whether, my wife, and like, it's just like, you have to look at things like, and I feel like if you don't do things like that, life becomes boring. If that makes any sense to you. Like I was in like a one, how do I put this? I was in a band called Windshield Meat, and it was like,
Okay.
and it was members of Scurvy, put it that way, the pirate hardcore band, and like, I couldn't jerk off in time. That's what it comes down to being. Like, it's that. I was never in a band. I never wanted to be in a band. Didn't want to do that. And this is where I came through. This is how this all worked. You know what I mean? And like, I booked shows or help my friends move their equipment and be part of whatever scene I could be a part of. And I had friends of mine show me the Cro-Mags. I had friends of mine show me about, more about like, learning about Metallica. There was this music store out here called Music Outlet that you go there and you learned about all this overseas European metal and all this guy. And this guy, Gary, fucking great human being. One of the best people ever, taught me so much about music. And there was another record store called Platypus out here, same thing. And there was another record store called Main Street Records, rest rest in peace. It was just so many. We were lucky to have so much stuff around here in Northampton and different shows and all this stuff. And I'm just going on a fucking tangent. I don't know where I was going with it, but learning from these things where I've had record labels, I've had record stores, I've done different things, learned it all, like trying to make things happen in music without knowing how to play a power chord. You know what I mean? I can do a paradiddle though. I can definitely do a paradiddle. But you know, it's like, I think one of the things is like, with anything you do, you should always try to experience as much as you can. Music's brought me to New Zealand, Australia, Europe, you know, Canada, Mexico, whatever. Not Japan or China yet. I need to go there, but it's like, if I mean, I've sat there. I went to Australia with a Casey Strain on a Parkway Drive tour with Suicide Silence and Data Remember and Confession, and it was probably one of the top 5 things that ever happened in my fucking life. Going and watch in Australia, one of the greatest places ever. If you have a chance to go, you should go. And then going to New Zealand. Yeah, I don't do that without music, without being a part of music So, yeah, if you can, you know, my point to you is, if you can do this, you know, cool podcast and be creative with other things and do other things, you should try to do it. You know, with anybody, with anything. You know,
I think like I was saying kind of in the beginning of how we literally started, which was kind of getting fatigue and burnout and stuff like that. I had a moment about 2 weeks ago, as of when we're recording, where my wife wanted to go see the Pierce the Veil Don Broco Used tour. And for whatever reason, I guess, I mean, this is just the state of live music at this point, where like tickets just get bought up by resellers, and then now the reseller price is like $200 something each. And you're like, dude, this is a $1,800, $2,200 cap room. Tickets should be no more than $60 at most. And I remember, because I'm not this person, I fucking hit up one of the publicists of the band, like the headlining band, and I was like, hey, is there any way, like, I know media tickets aren't free. Can I pay face value for the media tickets and so I can take my wife to the show? And they were just like, hey, we just get you tickets. And I remember as soon as I knew I had tickets, I upgraded our tickets because I knew the venue was going to be packed. So like the upgrade gets you like mezzanine seating and like a private bar with a bathroom. So I was like, I will want that as an old person now. And I just remember I had gotten paid for my podcast sponsor that day. So I used that money to do that. And as I'm watching the Used play and watching my wife watch Don Broco and just like having a good time with my wife at this show, I was just thinking to myself, I was like, this fucking stupid thing that I do in my fucking office literally brought me here. It's how I got the tickets. It's how I paid for all the hookups. Like, fucking wild. And like, it's not to the level necessarily of being like, oh, I'm in New Zealand. I'm in a whole nother fucking country.
Yeah.
But it's fucking insane sometimes when you step out for just a second and just understand, like, this is happening because of this other thing that like is, to most people, makes no fucking sense. Like, the other time that happened, where I had that like moment where I was like, what the fuck is my life, is waking up from a nap, and I got I got hit up on Twitter because my podcast with Stormy Daniels was being used against her in her lawsuit against Trump's attorney or whatever, that she was mentally unstable and all this kind of shit.
Wait a minute. You talked to Stormy Daniels?
Mm-hmm.
How was that? Was that cool?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. We talked mainly about her like paranormal stuff that she was doing at the time. And just, I mean, I pretty much kept it off Trump because I didn't really want to talk about that.
I don't blame you there.
But it was just like fucking wild, like that I'm at Thanksgiving, like at a family gathering, and then because I posted something about it, I was like, didn't expect to wake up to this from a nap today. And then like my cousin's husband was like, so are you going to get subpoenaed? And I was like, and I didn't know what he was talking about. I was like, subpoenaed for what? And he goes, yeah, I saw something about your podcast. And I was like, and then everyone was like, wait, what's going on? And I'm like, oh yeah, I was like one of 2 podcasts that she had done. And now they're trying to use it to say she's mentally unstable to like stand trial or something, or that her claims are not valid. I don't know. But like, and people are just like, so what does that look like for you? And I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I have no idea. But again, it's just like one of those moments where you're just like, shit, I didn't think that was going to be a thing or remotely a thing. And I remember even when someone that's no longer a friend now for whatever reason, but they were like, "Hey, like you had Joanna Angel and like Small Hands on your show. Like, do you want to talk to Stormy?" And I was like, "Sure." And like again, it's so crazy how fucking like you're one person removed away from all of these things, and you just don't know. But again, can't be a dick because like those opportunities won't come your way.
I met Joanna Angel with Jesse Lee.
So nice.
At Warped
So
Tour.
nice.
I'm like, hi, nice to meet you. Do good work. Cool.
That's like I found out my podcast sponsor, his cousin is Jenna Hayes, and I was like, please get her on the show for me. Like, send her a text and be like, when we were talking about doing it, he's like, oh, her mom just died, so like probably not a good time.
Oh no!
Like, yeah, probably not. Yeah.
Oh, no.
I was like, you know what? Hit her up anyway.
It's so funny. Do you know who Jesse Lee is?
Yeah. Yeah. Didn't she just have like a real fucking bad accident a couple months ago? Yeah. God damn.
He was. It was. She's great. She's a great person. Last time I saw her, we went. Downright Merch does one of the web stores for Death Row Records, and we went 30th anniversary with Death Row Records at Crookston Castle in LA, right across from Supreme and all that. I forgot what street it is. And
we used to print for Crookston Castles back at my job.
And
weird.
Don't get me started there. And like I invited her to come down and hang out with us, and that was the last time I saw her. She's great. Love that. Love her. She's awesome. But yeah, where did you work?
I actually just went back to the company. I worked for this place called Vector Distribution. When I started about 12 years ago, we were doing stuff for like OVO, for Diamond Supply Company, for like DGK, a bunch of stuff like that. I just went back in the last like couple weeks after getting out of like retail and the bar industry again. And it's been a thing where it's been funny to kind of like get back into it. You're just like, you want to talk about another facet of the industry where you're just like, that shirt doesn't cost that much, or like the print on this is horrible, or whatever. Like just the amount of like shit like that, or like the changing trends. Like I was just talking to someone the other day about like I was like, why is everyone going back to comfort colors? Like and going to like not only comfort colors, which are like giant and they're fucking heavy, but then going with these like all over prints on the front and back, so it just feels like you have like 20 pounds of ink all over your fucking body on a like shirt that doesn't breathe. And I was like, I thought we were turning the page when we were starting to use like Bella and Canvas and American Apparel and like nice thin quality shirts.
I agree with you. I agree. Wholeheartedly agree with you. But yeah, man, I mean, are you going to come to the fest? You think, or what?
So, funny enough, I was talking with Corey and Jackie the other day because they're like, "Shit, are you coming?" Knowing that I was talking to you, and I was like, I don't even know if I've seen a press application thing for the fest.
You yell at Amy now. She's gonna get yelled at now. You can get her in trouble.
Well, no, because Amy's like dog passed away a couple of years ago, and she had texted me, and then so I had to reciprocate when she had to put Higgins down.
Higgins is great. I met Higgins a couple times.
But it was a thing where I love that woman so much, and she's given me so many great opportunities over the course of this show, and is a thing where very recently she's been building up Atom Splitter like so much recently in the last like couple of years, like with Tim and her crew that she's got. And it was so awesome the other day, like probably like 2 or 3 months ago, she was sent me an email and she was like, hey, just to let you know, like I'm kind of like taking, like I'm not the one dealing with the day-to-day stuff anymore. It's kind of Tim. I'm kind of running everything now and doing a bunch of other stuff. And I was like, that's so fucking cool. Like, good for you.
I've known Amy for like 22 years. And like back in the day when she worked for Roadrunner and all that stuff, she's awesome. She's good.
Yeah,
it was great too. Their whole team is great over there.
Yeah, I have no complaints against anybody that I've dealt with over there. But no, I think because the one thing, my wife bought tickets for Sleep Token on Thursday out in Detroit, but right now like there's some weird wonky thing with the tickets where it's like the money is gone that she paid for them, but like she doesn't have the tickets.
Oh no!
Not even like digitally or anything. It just says it's pending. So I'm like, that's kind of weird. but I was joking with her. I was like, oh, like, because we went and hung out with Corey when we were out in Vegas a couple months ago, before we moved back east. And so they were like, and Jackie lives in New Jersey, so she's like, you gotta come, like we gotta hang out. And I'm like, that's like totally up to my wife, because like it's, you know, we had a plan for the day before, and then she was like, you know, honestly, maybe I would rather go to that and get like not spend $400 to stay in Detroit. Da 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 da. And I was like, well, I mean, I don't know how much it costs to like stay around that area, or if everything's all booked up. And I was like, I guess after I talk to Scott, I can probably shoot Amy a thing, or whoever I have to, and be like, is there any way I can get approved for like media or something?
Oh, you're good. Just
do something like that so my wife and I can go.
Yeah,
and
you're
then figure out the rest.
You're good. Just tell me. I'll tell Amy you're good. Just you and your wife should come. You know, Sleep Token.
I've always wanted to go to the Palladium.
Sleep Token is great. Don't get me wrong. They're weird looking, but they're great.
Yeah, that's a band I did not see. I still don't really get it personally. I just feel like it's parts, not songs. Like where it's like, oh, here's the thing, and then it drops off. Oh, here's the heavy part, and you're like, oh, I mean, anyone can kind of do that. Like that's easy to just drop out something and come back.
But looking that good and doing it is a different.
Oh yeah. How long do you think because I mean, you were probably prime. Speaking of Amy and Roadrunner, you were probably prime Slipknot. Like no one got to see them without their mask. How long do you think Sleep Token identities being a mystery will hold out?
Yeah, at least 3 years. 3 or 4 years, maybe. I don't know. As long as they, people. It's funny, that whole idea. It's pretty cool. I actually enjoy that. I had friends of mine that worked for Slipknot back in the day, and like I'd go see them at shows, or they played or whatever, and then I did a show with them, and I'm like, and I'm sitting there, and like I was at the Palladium, and we're sitting there, and this dude, this kind of like boxy looking man, comes up to me, and I have my hand like on my arm. It was this arm, like on a thing, and he's like, "Hey man, I love your tattoos." I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's some Gunner Flash. My boy Jamie did it." Blah blah blah. He's like, "Yo, that's real cool. It's real cool." He's like, "Yo, check this out." I'm like, "Cool," and like, I'm like, "Fuck, are you like who like?" Who? And then it was Clown, and then there was other dudes. I'm like gathering who's who now. You know what I mean? And my friend Armin Butchcrump III, rest in peace, he works with them, and I met a lot of them. It was really cool. There's just those guys are really good people when it comes down to it. You know what I mean? They're hardworking. They dress. They got to wear a sauna suit for fucking for 2 hours. Fuck yeah.
With pyro.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, fuck that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they took out bands like Hatebreed and stuff back in the day. You know what I mean? That was they're good people. They get it, and like that's another thing that a lot of like it doesn't happen. I mean, it does and it doesn't. It doesn't happen very often where bigger bands. How do I put this without sounding like a fucking asshole? I wish more bigger bands would take out smaller bands and show things like this is this band or whatever. You know what I mean? With like a band that has nothing going on. Some bands do that still. But
I feel like we're starting to see that a little bit. I mean, Metallica bringing out Ice Nine, especially, like that was.
Oh no! I'm talking. Yeah, I mean, I'm talking.
But like even
Ice Nine plays Civic Center still. You know what I mean? Like, like I'm saying, like like Metallica taking out a band like I Am. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like that, like, you know what I'm saying? Or something like that. But I don't know. I wish there was like more stuff like that happened. Just like like.
I feel like we're starting to see it a little bit because I think enough of the bands, like I think a band that's been doing really good at kind of paying it forward, and then also bringing up the next scene right now, as I see it anyway. I feel like Knock Loose is really doing it right.
Oh yeah. 100%.
Like they pay respects to like all the bands that took them out. Like I remember having Brian on when they were. I think the second record was about to drop. Maybe I think Mistakes Like Fractures had just come out, but I don't think the record had come out. And I had because it was them and the Acacia Strain tour, and I remember having Vincent and Tom on, and then I did chat with Brian, and I think at the time they were about to play like like maybe like a Riot Fest or something that was like big, but it wasn't like the level where they're at now, where they're playing like Coachella and Walla and all that kind of stuff. And I just remember like talking to him, and I was like, yeah. And I remember asking the question to Brian, where I was like, a lot of bands, I remember like Hatebreed and, Terror and Etid and like a lot of the bands from that era, Shadows Fall, Killswitch even to a degree, they were always great at bringing out like the underground band and like a band that maybe took them out. And I was like, and I feel like it seems like you guys are doing that too. And I go, how important is it to bring your scene, like your contemporaries up with you, while also still paying respect to those who did and paid you those favors? And I mean, this, like I said, this is probably like 4 or 5 years ago. And to know that that's something that was important to them, important to the scene, it keeps the legacy bands alive, and it brings up the newer scene. And just see, like, when they did that headlining show, with Kubla Khan and what was it, like Year of the Knife maybe, or somebody, I can't remember who. No, they were doing a tour.
Yeah, with I forgot who else was on that.
I can't remember. They were just ass beaters all day. It was a very exhausting show. But I remember like seeing that, and like they sold out the band room at the intersection, 2,200 cap room, and having seen that band play a 400 cap room, a fucking 800 cap room,
Koyo opened up.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, that's right. But it was one of those that it's like seeing them do it, to then even seeing them on the Bring Me like Shed tour, and I remember thinking to myself, I was like, this will be the really big to me at the time as a fucking nobody, but I was like, can this translate? Because if it can translate in a shed, I already know it works in clubs, but if it can translate to a shed, if you can make it feel like a hardcore show like their shit does, if you can make it feel like that in a shed, this band's going to be unfucking touchable. And as sure as shit, as soon as like the backdrop went down and like the band came out, all of a sudden like the general pit area in front of the seats at the shed, it like all of a sudden like all these hardcore dudes just came out of nowhere, and it felt like a fucking Knocked Loose show, not like a giant shed show. And I was like, this band can fucking, like, they can do anything because they can make it translate.
I went to the LDB Fest, and I saw, when Knocked Loose, Kubla Khan, the day that Kubla Khan played, and Gates to Hell, Mouths for War, and Pain of Truth. And I've seen good amount of Knocked Loose shows. That band is no fucking joke in any which way, shape, or form. They are very, very good people, nice, kind people, humble people, and I hope the best for them in any which way, shape, or form. What they do and how they do things with everything, just great people. You can't say a bad thing about them at all. It's like the music's solid to the fucking core. Band members solid. Everything's great. Great team. Great people. Great label. Fucking Jake Brown, my good friend Jake Brown.
Yeah.
I can't. That's that I'm proud to be like, that's in our scene. That's our world. I mean, it's good. It's awesome. They're doing it right. They came up right.
100%. I feel like I could talk to you for hours and hours more about memories and shit.
Yeah, I gotta go.
Definitely want. Yep. Nope. Same. My wife is like, "Hey, are you almost done? It's time for dinner." So it's a thing where I very much could talk to you, and I very much am looking forward to hopefully meeting you at the festival and sharing a drink. I don't even know if you drink anymore. Seems like everyone's quit.
I just drank a whole glass of Jameson on our.
I mean, that's what I thought, but I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to speculate on what may or may not be in that glass. So you never know, man.
I'm a 52-year-old man. I can drink. It's good.
I've had 2 beers. Yeah, absolutely.
Come hang out, and it's going to be a great time. It's like I think, like I said, this is the best New England metal and hardcore festival lineup I think we ever put together, except for the first one where Earth Crisis was direct support to Man of War. But other than that,
I've actually tried to get Carl on the show, and he's got me a little intimidated because I always hear about. I can't remember if it was Jost or somebody else made a comment about how like Carl will sniff out those who are like not true to the core and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, fuck, man, like I love me some Earth Crisis and I respect this genre, but like I don't know if I'm like as versed in the shit as him. But I would love to talk to him about the legacy and just him as a person and the band, like just a conversation with him because like why not?
That's
But I'm also
another-
low key like if he'll just like eat me alive and be like,
no,
this was a fucking waste.
He's fine.
I know.
He gets it. You know, it's one of these things where it's just like listen, the guy went on Ozfest. You know, he watched people drink and get fucked up. So it's like, I think Earth Crisis was one of the greatest metal bands, straight edge, whatever hardcore bands you want to call it. And I think that whole thing. I remember the first time I heard Earth Crisis. It's a 7-inch, and it was just like, what the fuck is this Slayer fucking hardcore? What is this? And it's like, it's been Earth Crisis, and I'm like, holy shit, it's amazing. I'm like, why does it sound? It sounds so hard. It's like, and I'm like, fuck, this is great. Yeah, Earth Crisis is great.
Don't you love that feel? Don't you love like having those memories of when your mind was blown listening to something and be like, what the fuck is this? This is the heaviest thing ever. Or it's this thing.
Andrew from I Am is trying to call me right now. This is funny. He's very
No
funny.
worries. I will let you go so you can take the phone call and have a dinner with your wife. Very much. I'm so glad we finally got to do this. I have said so many times on the podcast that I'm a firm believer that in doing this, like I said earlier, there are so many people I wanted to have on the show, but I'm infinitely more happier with the results when it finally happened down the road, because I think if I would have done it when I was trying to, I think I would have tried too hard to make it something other than what it should have been, which is just a natural conversation. Like, we covered a ton of things, and I didn't feel like it was forced at all.
Yeah, man, you can call me anytime. I'll do this anytime with you. It's great. You're awesome. You should definitely come grab your wife, come out to Metal Fest though, and it's like I said, it's going to be a great time. You know,
Absolutely.
And you know, and Amy will be there too, so you can come hang out with her and stuff.
Yeah, I haven't seen her since Sonic Temple, like before COVID.
My wife will be there too. You can come hang out with her. You know, have beers with her.
I love hanging out with couples. Like, as weird as it is to say, it's always like the fun thing. Like when you have a spouse and you're just like, hey, like couples, like it happens in hardcore and metal.
We have everybody coming. Like, it's funny. My cousin, I don't think he's ever been to a metal show, but his roommate Timmy is coming, and like they're all coming, and just it's gonna be a good time for everybody. It's gonna be great. It's just, you know, it's amazing. I'm just really happy to put this on, be back involved with that and doing this, and it's gonna be cool. But
I know a lot of people are looking forward to it, man. So I'll see you hopefully in 5 days before my birthday, 5 days before I turn 39. So
I will buy you a Metal Fest beer for your birthday.
I will drink it.
All right, man.
Enjoy the rest of your night, Scott.
You too. Yeah. Bye-bye.
So that was my conversation with Scott Lee. Want to thank him once again for taking the time to chat and bullshit. Love hearing the stories. And, you know, something that I do find interesting is, you know, you do something like this year in and year out, and you're always trying to outdo yourself. You're always trying to have like the best lineup that you can. And it's just this thing where, like, from booking shows for a few years, I just remember like the grind and the struggle of times of like filling a date, getting a band. Sometimes you'd have a show ready to announce, and like the opener or like the direct support had to bail, and then you have to hold off, and then it's finding someone else, or hey, do we just want to add another local opener or whatever. Then you're dealing with venue stuff and their calendar and all these things that it's just like the idea of working to put on a festival just seems so fucking daunting. Like all the shit that you have to do, vendors, to make sure, like security, that everything and anything that needs to happen for this to go off, that it happens and it is successful, and then it happens again and it happens again and it happens again. Throw in and compound onto the fact that Scott Lee also still books shows consistently during all that. It's just one of those things that to me, it just would be, I just don't know how someone would do it. Like, I guess that's the difference between me doing it part-time versus kind of making a career of doing it. But it's still just fascinating to me to kind of hear some of these stories. And I mean, also just the bands that Scott got to book, and some of these up-and-coming bands that are now fucking huge and massive in their own respective rights. I do got to say, I'm really hoping that maybe Blood Has Been Shed will get back together for next year, or at least one of these years. I feel like I'm going to be a fucking dick right now and say, like, I feel like I've put it out into the world enough in the last couple of years between talking to Howard, talking to Justin twice, talking to Corey, that it's like, I think there's enough things happening now behind the scenes, maybe where it's like, maybe it's time. And it just sounds so like shitty to say, like, I think I've done the work to help make it happen. But I just remember, like, after the episode with Corey and, like, all the metal news sites picking up on, Corey talking about the last Blood Has Been Shed record and what state does it exist and all this kind of stuff. I just remember Corey sending me an email, like, a week or so later. It had to have been, like, a week later. And him just going, like, people are reaching out to me that were working on that record with me. People are asking, like, if I'm going to be working on it. How close is it to being done? Like, I think sometimes, like, when these things happen, sometimes the headline will get made off of a show, whether it's this one or another one. And it is something I actually bring up in a future chat with Lurk from Lamb Goat, where it's like, you hope that it doesn't bum out the person that you've kind of spent time with, kind of become friends with in some capacity. And it just is this thing where, I remember when the news broke of the, like, Corey episode and him just sounding excited, even in an email, that he was excited that anyone gave a shit and that, like, people that were associated with the project were still interested in helping him complete the project and at least getting the music that's sitting on a hard drive out. And to me, like, I think it just showcases, like, how much people give a shit about that band. And I mean, here we are. It's 2023. Like, I never thought I'd get the amount of fucking bands I never thought I'd get to see. I never thought I'd get to see Refused. I've seen them 3 or 4 times now at this point, actually. I've had Dennis on the podcast. Like, that's fucking wild. Botch, never in a million years did I think Botch was ever getting back together. Saw them earlier this year in Seattle. Like, the day and age now of, like, bands getting older and being like, oh, we're never going to play together. Like, I think some bands are just getting to the point. It's like, what's the harm in getting together and at least doing 1 or 2 shows and just going from there? Like, It Dies Today getting back together finally. Like, people were saying that probably wouldn't happen. It just is a thing where I just will never say never. Like, not in this day and age, not with, something like Furnace Fest, something, like some Blue Ridge Rock Festival and some of that. Some of these bands getting back together and finally kind of reuniting, getting invigorated. I don't know how you want to put it, but I really do fucking hope that Blood Has Been Shed gets back together. If they play next year, I will fucking buy the first ticket that goes on sale when that's announced. I need to see that band once in my life. And it just needs to happen. And it would be the most fitting for it to be at the New England Metal and Hardcore Festival. So here's to hoping that the festival continues. I'm excited to see how well it does with being outside instead of being kind of inside on the 2 stages. I think that opens it up to a lot more bands that can come and play and bring different kind of production. I mean, even with, Parkway Drive playing on Friday as the headliner, like, I would assume they're bringing their full pyro with them. It's been, like, one of the biggest selling points of this last Parkway tour that's supposed to kept getting postponed, but was that it was going to be the full production with flat fire and all that kind of stuff. I remember even back in the day before Rammstein was touring more consistently here in the States and getting to the level where they could play these, stadiums, that it was like, oh man, like, they're cool. But when you see them overseas and they play like these giant fucking, arenas and such, the production is just crazy. Like, to be able to finally see some of these bands doing that, I think is what is going to afford the New England Metal Hardcore Festival to take that next step with what they can offer bands and what bands they can get with the production and all that kind of stuff to really showcase each band doing what they actually do. And then obviously, with Saturday, Lamb of God, Hatebreed, Shadows Fall, Dying Fetus, Black Dahlia, Fit for an Autopsy, Despised Icon, Chelsea Grin, Terror, fucking 100 Demons, Vain, Jesus Piece, like Darkest Hour, 200 Stab Wounds, Judiciary, Jesus Christ, Ringworm, I think Undeath, I always want to say Unearth, Undeath. It's just one of those things to me where, like, this festival's got something for everybody, whether you're into kind of newer shit, more of that underground, more of the mainstays that used to play the festival. Like, there's a little bit of something here for everyone, I feel like. So I'm very glad to see it come back. I'm excited to see, hopefully, it coming and just growing for the next couple of years and just becoming the mainstay and the legacy festival that always made me want to go to this thing. All of that said, let's start wrapping up this episode. If you would like to keep up with Scott Lee, you can find him on Facebook at scott.lee.5680. You can find him on Instagram at scottlee26. And you can also find him on Twitter under scottlee26. If you would like to keep up with all things the New England Metal Hardcore Festival, you can keep up with it. Actually, simple enough, metalandhardcorefest.com. That'll be your landing page for everything. There's still VIP tickets and all that kind of stuff going on. It's sold out, but one of the cool ones actually was that it's like the holy shit wow mega deluxe VIP. It actually came with a hotel rooms included, which I thought was super nice. But all that said, you can go there, check out everything, full lineup, purchase tickets, whatever. If you'd like to keep up with it on the socials, though, you can find it on Facebook at Metal and Hardcore Fest, Instagram at NEMHF Official, and Twitter at NEMHF_official. And if you'd like to keep up with the podcast, you can find us simple enough, Brew Speak Pod, on all your major social media platforms. You can email me at brutallyspeaking@gmail.com. You can also rate, review, subscribe. You know why that's important. Just go ahead and do it, whatever, if you can. Some platforms don't allow you to. But be that as it may, I want to thank our podcast sponsors, Rockabilia. Use our code BREW10 at checkout. Save 10% off your total purchase order. Head on over to rockabilia.com. They have so many great things, so many cool band collabs. The Ghost one still gets me. Their fans just not too stoked on too many things. And also, Starving Artist Brewery. Love those guys out there making some great beer. There's actually one that they're making with somebody else with sounds like, I think it's just a friend of the breweries. The flavor profile that they said this thing is going to be sounds absolutely delicious. I can't wait to get some. So if you're in the Michigan area and you're nearby, go check them out. Worst case, just throw them a like on Instagram or Facebook. Either way, keep up with what they're doing. I can't tell you how many breweries I follow, and I sometimes sporadically will be able to get some of the product here in Michigan. But a lot of times, like when I find something or come across something in my travels, I'll just keep up with what they're doing. And a lot of times I'll just be sad and bummed out that I can't have this delicious beer that I keep seeing these places making and no one near it to get it for me. But that's my own cross to bear. But for this episode of the podcast, I am John, and I will see you all next week, where our guest is Lurk from Lambgoat. If you enjoyed this one for all the behind-the-scenes stuff, that one equally is a lot of fun. We kind of really dive deep into the acquisition of Lambgoat and a lot of other things. So excited to bring that one to you, and I'll talk to you all then.